Welcome back to another episode of Shifting Schools. I'm your host, Jeff Ludic, along with my co-host, Trisha Friedman, who's off today. We bring you voices from around the education sphere that help you shift our schools and classrooms as we prepare students for their future, not our past. If you are a first-time listener, welcome to the show. And you've caught us in the middle of our mini-series on the power of play, where all summer long, we're interviewing educational leaders around the power of play in our own lives and the lives of our students. Before we dive into today's episode, let me ask you this simple question. When was the last time you experienced hard fun? You know, that kind of challenging yet rewarding fun that keeps you engaged and learning. Well, today we have a fantastic conversation lined up with two incredible guests who are experts in making learning both fun and effective. We'll be talking about Ludic pedagogy, a concept that intertwines fun, play, playfulness, and positivity in education. Our guests, Sharon and Keith, are both professors of higher education in Canada, and together they authored the book, Ludic Pedagogy, a serious fun way to teach and learn. For more information on the book and how to reach out to Sharon and Keith, make sure to check out the show notes below. This book explores innovative teaching methods in classrooms at all levels of education, and that's what we get into in today's episode. Before I get you over to our conversation, here is a quick word from today's show sponsors. Discover the power of acknowledgement with Lebra. In a world where every staff member's dedication shapes the future, recognizing their efforts becomes our mission. Lebra transforms your school into a place where achievements, big and small, are celebrated daily, creating a ripple effect of motivation and pride. Join the recognition revolution with Lebra, where every achievement is a cause for celebration. For more information and a free demo, contact me at jeff@shiftingschools.com today. Librarians, meet MackinVision, the future of library management. With a student-centered design, MackinVision's intuitive interface and seamless navigation ensures that your students find the information they need quickly and effortlessly. Discover how MackinVision can transform your school at mackin.com/MackinVision. All right, and with that, get ready for an enlightening conversation with Sharon and Keith as they share their insight and practical tips on making education a fun and rewarding experience for all. All right, welcome back to the Shifting Schools podcast. I'm so excited today to be joined by Sharon and Keith, authors of Ludic Pedagogy, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. But thank you both for joining us today on the podcast as we are doing a mini series all about the power of play, and specifically for us as adults and for our students. We're just talking about everything, and I'm so excited to have you here. Sharon and Keith, welcome to the show. And as we get started, my first question to you is, can you explain what Ludic pedagogy is? Keith, I believe you've got the first question here.
All right. Ludic pedagogy it's a very simple model of pedagogy. And really what it is, it brings in four elements: fun, play, playfulness, and positivity. And they all interact and they all play a somewhat distinct role within the model. So fun is the intrinsic motivator, right? We want students to have fun so that they want to come to class, that they want to engage with the material. Play is the activity. That's the thing that they do, whether it's a game or some other activity in class. Playfulness is the attitude. So it's the way that we as instructors and students hopefully approach the material. And that's ideas of humor and curiosity and creativity. That's all rolled into playfulness, the attitude. And the last piece is positivity. And that's the affect, the emotional or mood piece that comes with it. So you can see how they all interact and work together, but that's the model in a nutshell.
I love that, man. You did such a great job. I can see that. Okay. That's great. Great visualization. Sharon, welcome to the podcast as well. Can you maybe break down for us what is one myth about play that you seek to correct or try to call out in the book and through this pedagogical approach?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us today, Jeff. I think people usually think that if something like things that we do in university or in college or in any educational setting, that if it's fun or if it looks like play, then that automatically means it's easy. But Keith and I are here to dispel that myth. And we are proponents of the idea of what people have called hard fun. That is, that means like something that's fun, even though it's really hard, or something difficult that you might try to accomplish or complete or understand or something like this. And we suggest that hard fun is actually really rewarding. So I think Keith has an addition to my response here as well.
Yeah, similar to what Sharon said, one of the myths, or maybe the myth that we try to dispel, is the idea that work and play are polar opposites. Right? That's absolutely not true. Research shows that when work and play exist together, there's a whole number of positives, the specifics of which depend really on the specific context. But if we're talking about the higher education classroom, there tends to be higher levels of learning, there tends to be lower stress, greater social bond formation, and so on. So the idea of fun and play isn't the opposite of work. It isn't the opposite of learning. We're not making things easy.
I like that. And I know that the book focuses specifically on higher education, universities and colleges classes. Why is your focus there? And are you seeing movement in this way? Because I'm thinking back to my own college days in the 90s where it was very much a sit and get world. Are we still seeing that at the university level?
Not in my classes, Jeff. Absolutely not.
I need to take your classes, Sharon. I love that.
Okay. Oh, it's super fun. One of the funny things I always share is that I have a fourth year class that students there's always a wait list for that class. And I remember this one time we were just starting an activity. A student left to go to the washroom, came back, and everyone was in a different seat. Everyone was in a different place. And he stood there and he waited for his friends to wave their arms and say, "Here we are, we're over here." And he looked at me and he said, "I should have known if I left that I'd be coming back to something different."
I love that.
And more generally speaking, outside of just our classrooms, I think there is this movement towards more play. There's still a long ways to go, but there is a general trend away from the chalk and talk or the sage on the stage models of higher ed. It's slow going. There's still a lot of that out there.
And I think there's this idea, I'm just wondering where this goes from you coming from a higher ed standpoint. And I love that we have you on because I think a lot of times, a lot of our focus and a lot of our audience are K-12 educators. And we're thinking that, we've got to prepare kids if we're preparing kids for university and colleges, and whether that's 4-year or 2-year, they need to know how to learn by sitting and taking notes and listening to a good lecture. And we know that things are moving that way. And then from your standpoint in higher education, I'm thinking of even like when we're looking at the workplaces of today. First of all, a lot of workplaces now, we're working from home more. And I'd love to dig into how do you transition some of this to online as well and high flex. I saw that in your book. That's a big thing that I support as well. But also just what changes are we seeing in the workplace? Like one of the things that comes to mind for me is when I think of the big tech companies. Being here in Seattle, we've got Amazon and Google at our back doorstep, and they seem like they are quote unquote fun places to work. They've got ping pong tables. Amazon has their 2 big terrarium balls downtown where you can go and work anywhere when they've got birds in there. And it's just it's a different experience to work than it is to say I think our notion of sitting in a cubicle. Are you seeing any of this as far as using this pedagogical approach in university? Is this supporting students who then go into the workforce to be in these places that are quote unquote more fun because work and play are the same? Are you seeing anything?
I think that's a longer discussion than the half hour we've got here.
Okay.
But coming out of the pandemic, we're facing all these issues like quiet quitting and the great resignation and all these kinds of things where people discovered that life's too short to sit in a cubicle.
Yeah.
Right. So there is the start, I think, of this movement to not necessarily role play into the workplace, but recognizing that there has to be more in it for the employee. And hopefully that these ideas roll out into the workforce, because life's too short to work a job you hate.
Yeah, I love that. Sharon, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think when the students we have right now experience the notion of hard fun, and that learning can be fun, and that hard work can be fun, these kinds of things, that as they are employed and then become leaders, then shifting the workplace into a more fun environment, I think, is going to be more possible. So I think Keith and I, as we're creating our classes and our Ludic pedagogy model, we're thinking about shaping leaders for later. So when they get into the workplace, they're transforming the spaces even more.
I love that. You've used this term hard fun now a couple of times. Can you maybe give us an example or break that down? When you say hard fun, what does that mean? What does that look like in a classroom environment?
Do you want to take that, Keith, or do you want me to?
Thanks. Let me give you a more general example, and then I'll try and give you a classroom example. Jeff, do you play video games?
No, not since Duck Hunt.
Okay. You're familiar that usually at the end of a video game, there's the big boss, right?
Yes.
It's hard, right? It's more difficult to beat them. But people keep coming back and trying to win that level or defeat that big boss because it's fun. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Right? That's the idea of hard fun. If a game is too easy, we don't play it because it's too easy. So that's the idea of hard fun. I teach a class on negotiations, and it's not a matter of winning, but the situations that I give to the students to negotiate, it's difficult, right? There's a lot of information. They're negotiating against a classmate who's as well, if not more prepared than they are. And it's fun, but because it is difficult. So that's the idea of hard fun.
Oh, I like that. Is there a specific way you structure that? Like, how do you structure that learning experience for students?
Is in the negotiations class or in general?
Yeah, or just in general. Is there a specific structure that you try to, are you doing, is it almost like an inquiry cycle that you're going through? Do you have some kind of structure that you lean on when you're creating these things?
Not
like, how do you know something's hard fun?
There's the two pieces, right? Is it hard? Is it fun? So the first piece is it's got to be fun.
Okay. And fun to the students, not fun to you.
Both. Right?
Okay.
If I'm not having fun in the classroom, the students aren't going to have fun.
Okay. Fair. I like that.
Right? I try and design, and Sharon's got this wonderful tool that I'm sure she'll talk about. But when I'm designing an activity, is it something that I would want to do? Is it something that I would enjoy doing as a student? And then it's just a matter of designing that activity to the appropriate skill level.
Okay.
Right? So if we're starting to stick with my negotiations class, if students have never given any thought to negotiation and the tools and tactics that they use, the level is going to be much lower. But as we move through the course and they gain skill, the difficulty, if you will, of those activities is going to increase as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I have a similar experience in one of my classes. It's a communication and conflict class, and I want to teach students to reflect on how they feel when they're frustrated. So I pick something that's really hard, and I give them a piece of origami paper, and I just say to them, pick whatever paper you want, and they'll pick something that's pretty because they don't know what they're going to do. And then I say, now you've got to fold a paper crane. And they're like, oh my God, no. Oh my God, this is so hard. And so I say to them, however you want. You can look it up on YouTube. You can use directions like still directions. You can follow a picture, anything, as long as you come out with a paper crane at the end. So they've got to reflect on, what do you do when you don't know what to do? How do you seek help? How do you deal with frustration because it's hard to fold a paper crane if you never have, right? And
Sure.
so do you talk to other people? Do you prefer to work alone? These kinds of things. And then at the end of that class, like some of these paper cranes look very distorted and it's really hard, but everybody leaves that day and says, that was really fun.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for tuning in to Shifting Schools. Let's pause our discussion to spotlight Lebra HQ, a breakthrough in using AI to deepen connections within organizations. Imagine an environment where every staff member feels truly seen and valued. This is the heart of Lebra's mission. Lebra transforms how leaders celebrate and recognize the personal and professional milestones of their team members. It's not just about reminders. Lebra's AI dives deeper, offering insight into enhanced team cohesion and promote a culture where support and acknowledgement are paramount. Picture a school where every individual is acknowledged, from work achievements to personal victories, creating a culture of appreciation in just minutes a day. In these challenging times, where the demands on educators have never been higher, Lebra offers a way for school leaders to lead with true empathy and compassion, ensuring every team member feels an integral part of their community's success. Discover how Lebra can revolutionize your school's culture. For a demo, contact me at jeff@shiftingschools.com. Let's build a future where every educator and staff member feels connected and valued. And now, let's get back to our conversation. In your book has a lot of practical tips for educators. Can you highlight maybe one of them that you think might be helpful for all educators to think about?
It's a very broad tip that I'll use.
No, go ahead.
The very broad tip that I would give to all educators, and this is from not just higher ed, but from K to 12 as well.
Yeah.
My wife teaches grade 5, so we talk about the similarities and differences in our class.
Yeah.
And that tip is have fun. A lot of what students do in the classroom is based on modeling. If they sense that we're not enthusiastic about the material, if we're not interested in the material, they're not going to be interested. They're not going to be enthusiastic. But if we come in and we model having fun with that material and being interested and enthusiastic and curious and engaged, they're more likely to be that as well. So there's kind of two pieces here. One of it goes back to what I said earlier, is we spend a significant portion of our life at work, far too much time to not have fun there. So we need to have fun in our own jobs. So having fun in the classroom while we're teaching. And that just increases the amount of fun that we're having in our lives and all the benefits to our well-being that entails. The second piece is that fun and all those other pieces of Ludic pedagogy that I mentioned, those are all good for our students, their learning, and their well-being as well. So simply by going in and having fun in our classrooms, there's no downside.
I love that.
Yeah. So my tip for educators would be, and this is a fun tip, I think, is to ask yourself the question, is this lesson, is this reading, is this experiment, is this assignment, is this activity, is this whatever we're going to do, is this going to make my students more interesting at parties? And it sounds simple, but it's actually not a very simple question, because like educators know that, like for me, even the biggest compliment a student can give me is when they say like, I talked about our class with my parents. I talked about this when I went home or whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can retire now. They talked about class outside of class, right? So if we take a loose definition of party, call it family dinners, a networking event, when students go home to their roommates after class, whatever, then it makes sense. Because when students are familiar with course material, concepts, stuff you talked about in class, they can then explain it to someone else, like a grandparent, someone they're crushing on, someone who's not in their major field of study. Then the students, they understand that course content, they can break it down, and they can articulate it to someone else, even if they're nervous, even if they're in an unfamiliar place. So my question, is this going to make my students more interesting at parties? In other words, does this activity help my students to apply it to their life outside of class? And that, I think, is where we're going.
It's so great. As you're both talking, I had a teacher that when I was working with a school district and I was training all these teachers, and we were talking about doing a lot of this, right? Like how do you make learning, especially for K-12, you've got such a wide range. And how do you make learning fun for kids? And part of it is just understanding where kids are coming from and what they're doing. And I had this 8th grade teacher who was teaching different ways to be persuasive, right? All the different ways that we can persuade other humans to do things. And his hard fun was, okay, we're going to learn all these different ways to be persuasive, but I want you to pick something that you've been asking your parents for. And I want you to use one of these persuasive strategies in text messaging, only through text messaging. So that's your vehicle. You have to use text messaging. And I want you to persuade your parents to do or give you or buy you whatever this thing has been going for, because now we're learning about persuasive. And he came back and he said, I've never seen kids dig in to the point where, one, they're using their technology, text messaging.
Yes.
They're trying to get something and they're learning all these different ways that they can be persuasive.
Right on.
And the crazy part is he had a girl in his class who's been asking for a pony and was able, like, parents bought her a pony. And of course, now she's saying to herself, oh my gosh, it actually works. Like, these ways of being persuasive actually works. Another student was asking for a new bed because he didn't like the bed. And so he used one of these persuasive protocols and persuaded his parents. And over text messaging, the parents like, you're absolutely right. We should go pick you up a new bed today after school. And he said and it didn't work for all of the kids, but he said the hard fun of first figuring out what persuasive strategy was going to work on your parents, and then having to come up with a text messaging. How are you going to, is it one big long text message to your parents? Is it engaging your parents in a conversation that you can be persuasive in the conversation? Yeah. He goes, they learned more. And he goes, and it was like, they dug in. And it was like for a week. He goes, I didn't teach anything for a week because they were all preparing for Friday. We were all going to text message parents in our class on Friday. But all week, they're going through the motions and they're trying to figure out what's the best way for my parents and my relationship with my parents. And he goes, it was so much fun.
Yes.
And I was thinking, you know what? That's when you know that you're into something. Sharon, like, the kid comes back and he's just shaking his head like, I should have known that you'd have just messed up the entire class when I moved out. I think there's so much fun in learning. And sometimes we forget that because we get so focused on, I've got to hit these standards and I've got to be at a certain place at a certain time. And if I haven't finished unit 3 by October, and we somehow find ways to forget the fun part. And I think that happens at all levels of education. And Absolutely. It's so difficult to think about that. And that brings me to my last question. Just what is one piece of advice you have for listeners who are mostly educators, educational leaders, looking to better embed play in their lives as well? Because as you both have stated, if we're having fun, that's number one, Keith, I think you said, is it's got to be fun for me too. Yeah. What is something that you either do or a recommendation that you have for educators who are listening, they're like, how do I create something, or how do I bring fun back into my own job or my own classroom for myself to support me in doing this kind of work? That's a hard question, I know, but
I think you have to have fun in your own life too. Like Keith mentioned modeling and being a fun person, being a lifelong learner, these kinds of things. If you're not having fun, your students aren't going to have fun. So you got to have fun in your own personal life. And that was how I first started interpreting your question. And I would encourage educators to think about what you liked to do when you were a kid, and then do more of that. So I'll think about myself. Like when I was a kid, I loved doing crafty things. And now I kind of bundle that in my personal life with doing other things. Like I'll do a crafty thing while I'm watching TV, or even my paper crane example. That's a crafty thing, but it's hard, right? So I think about, what did I find fun? And then I pull in little elements of that into my own personal life or even into class. And that kind of gives students an anchor, like that paper crane example, because when you're trying to do something hard, they needed to reflect on that and how do they seek help and how do they go through that. But I used the crafty thing as the vehicle to get there.
I love that. I love that.
My tip would be lighten up. There's opportunities for play everywhere all the time. I mean, at home in your own life, you could chase the dog, blow bubbles in the yard, whatever. In the classroom, tell a joke, laugh at students' jokes or their stories, talk to students about their lives. Play doesn't have to just mean structured games. It means engaging in behavior you find fun. Play is an activity. So whether it's structured or unstructured, it's just doing something that you find fun. So be willing to do it. Right? Be willing to engage in some activity that you find fun in the classroom. As the saying goes, we don't stop playing because we grow old, because we stop playing.
Mackin Educational Resources has once again partnered with us for our summer mini-series. Thank you to Mackin for continuing to be a partner of the Shifting Schools community. Their new product, MackinVision, is the future of library management. Created with your students' need at the forefront, MackinVision offers a user-friendly interface that simplifies navigation, making it easy for students to find what they need. This state-of-the-art system includes features like intuitive browsing, secure multi-level access, multimedia searching, and whole school rostering. Additionally, it has a teacher library portal, aggregated dashboard, live analytics, and centralized reporting. MackinVision is designed to streamline your school's library operations. Learn more about how MackinVision can benefit your school at mackin.com/MackinVision. Schedule your free demonstration and experience the future today. As somebody who this is my last podcast of the week and then I get to go camping for 3 days, that's my fun. So I'm excited. So that's me getting out and doing my fun thing. I'm reading the synopsis of your book, and you talk about using pedagogy not only in face-to-face classrooms, but also in hybrid, high flex, and online environments.
Yep.
I know we have a lot of teachers now, especially after pandemic. We still have a lot of public school educators who are teaching 1 or 2 online classes because this has almost become part of public education now, as there's this online component, or families have the choice to stay online or do 1 or 2 classes online.
Yep.
How does some of these techniques and ideas of being fun? It's one thing, I think, Sharon, to be face-to-face and having kids making cranes and being able to bounce ideas off each other in a face-to-face classroom. Mm-hmm. How do some of these ideas transfer, say, to an online learning environment?
I think one of the things that is not any different between face-to-face and online is some assignments, right? I am prepared to die on the hill of the non-disposable assignment. Most assignments tend to live between the student and the instructor, the student and the educator. So what I try to do is give my students opportunities to do assignments that can be translated elsewhere. For example, I teach communication and digital media studies. So students can start a YouTube channel, do a social media post, make a podcast, do a vlog, things like that. Giving students the freedom to decide what medium they're doing their assignments in, that kind of choice goes a long way. But if we're talking just about digital delivery, I think students love 5HP stuff, like filling in the blanks and matching and little quizzes and stuff at the end of readings. It just breaks up the monotony, and that kind of stuff, even university students find fun.
Wow.
I know it seems like a lot of our book is the in-person kind of stuff, but the whole idea of ludic pedagogy actually arose online during the pandemic. And that was the context we were all operating in when we conceptualized the model and started writing the book. That was in our heads the whole time we were developing this, even if it doesn't always show up on the page.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm looking at this, and through the pandemic, I was supporting, my team and I supported over 178 school districts and 22,000 educators around making that transition to teaching online. And I agree with you. I think a lot of these things with small tweaks still make sense. There is a lot of way you can bring fun and engagement through screens by making small little tweaks. They don't always have to be like, it seems like I think a lot of times it seems like it's a bigger lift than it actually is to actually get engagement through screens. And maybe that's just me because I spend a lot of time on them already, but and that was a lot of the things we were doing. And Sharon, you talked about this. A lot of it has to do with choice around, yes, you can do a YouTube channel or a podcast, like that ability to give choice and ownership no matter the age of your students is a critical component to introducing fun. Because if I want to do social media, that's fun for me. It's hard fun, but that's fun for me versus I want to do a podcast or I'm going to someday be a YouTube star. So let me start my YouTube channel now. Making it personal is also a way of making it fun, regardless of how your class is set up. And how often, and this is just a question to every educator that's listening, how often are we making sure we're giving choices so that students can find their own fun within the assignment, the assessment, or the learning activity that we're preparing for them? Instead of saying, I'm sorry, this one has to be an essay. Really? Does it have to be? I don't know.
That's the bugaboo with fun, is that it's a very subjective thing. What's fun for me might not be fun for you or Sharon. And what's fun for you two might not be fun for me. You're right. In giving this choice, we're more likely to find something that each of the students is going to find fun.
I love that. I am so excited to have you guys on as guests. Thank you so much for your time. The book, which I highly recommend, regardless at what age level you teach, is worth going and having a look at and purchase and a read. This series is coming out over the summer. A great time to go buy the book. Find yourself a fun place to sit and read it. Ludic Pedagogy, a serious, fun way to teach and learn. Sharon and Keith, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today. If people want to learn more about you or they want to reach out to you to have further conversation, what's a good way for them to do that?
The book is available at all booksellers online. Your local bookstore is a great choice. I am on Twitter, which I'm still calling Twitter.
I like it.
Yes, and Instagram and TikTok, all the same handle. Dr. D.R.S. Lauricella, Lauricella.
And Keith?
The best way to make sure that you reach me is email me, edmundsk@brandonu.ca. You can find me on social media too. I'm occasionally lurking out there.
Okay, awesome. We'll make sure that links to all of that are in the show notes as well. Again, thank you both for being here and sharing your wisdom. And as we continue on our mini series about the power of play in the classroom. Thank you both.
Thank you.
It was fun.